Okay, we are gonna continue to talk about the kind of detailed topics in property right. Next topic I want to talk about is inheritance. When the father gave its wealth to its sons and daughters, they have to pay the inheritance tax. I will tell you one story. I think this is the best example. There was a very rich person and who has a lot of real estate as well as cash, and then he has a little boy son, probably the middle school. So it's like he's like 15 years old or something, and the son asked the father, "I heard that you have like a lot of real estate, like land as big as my middle school." The father said, "Oh yeah, I have a land like 5 times bigger than your middle school." And the son said, "Then I don't understand." And father said, "Why? Why you don't understand, son?" And the son said, "If you are so rich, why should I study? Because I don't have to study, I don't have work, but still I can live a very good life because you are going to give me a lot of money." Well, of course, the father felt terrible and told the son, "Son, it's my money and I'm not going to give it to you. So you should make your own money, you should study hard, and you should work hard because it's my money but not yours." And the son get very disappointed. But the next morning, father was so surprised because uh, there was a very expensive taxi in front of his house early in the morning. And the father said, "Who called the taxi?" And the son said, who is only 15 years old, "I did, father." "Why?" "Because you're not going to give me the money when you're dead. If you die, then I would be broken. I wouldn't have, I'm not going to be a rich person. So while you are still alive, I try my best to use them up. So why should I walk to the school? I will take the taxi to the school and come back with the taxi every day. So, I have no reason to be stingy or like not using your money." Okay, so this father has two problems. One, if he gives the money to the son, he would be kind of like spoiled and does not work very hard. If he does not give the son the money, the son would like have a like try his best to use them up before father dies. Okay, so it's the father and son relationship, and we realize that the rich person and rich person's daughter and sons have their own problems, which I do not know. But however, we have a formal name for it. Uh, Number one, circumvention cost, and number two, depletion cost. Circumvention cost is when the government charge a huge inheritance tax in Korea, usually like 50%. So if your father has died with $2 million asset, only 1 million would be get to you and 1 million would be taken by the government. You wouldn't like it. Okay, so there are many lawyers who specialize in how to avoid those inheritance tax. So you should have, if your father is really rich, then people usually hire very smart lawyers and things like that, and they tell you how to circumnavigate those high taxes, so you will get the most of $2 million your father left in your pocket instead of paying anything to the government. Okay, so that costs a lot. Okay, another thing is, if the government is really strict and preventing any circumventions, then what would the people do? the government would easily think, okay, so I'm going to charge 50% of everything. So this old man has $2 million. So sooner or later, we are going to get 1 million. No. If that is so sure, then the old man and his son and daughters try their best to use them up. Because, they would naturally think paying tax is like the money taken for no use. So if you are sure that the money would be taken anyway, why not using it myself? The father worked very hard to accumulate 2 million. Maybe if it gets to their family, he would be happy. But then if the government take more than half, then he would say, oh, I don't have to be saving so much. I'm going to just use them up so that the government would have nothing to take it from me when I die, something like that. So those things should be considered when you are thinking about inheritance tax. Too high inheritance tax may result in very small amount of tax revenue. Okay. Another thing is it's the struggle between the government and the rich people. On the other hand, there is a struggle between the father and son. There are some fathers and mothers who do not trust their sons so much. So, it is my money, but I really don't trust my son and daughter so much. I spend my whole life to accumulate this wealth and buy houses and things like that. But then as soon as I die, my son and daughters would use them up. Or I value this land where many graves of my ancestors are, and the chances are, as soon as I die, my son and daughters inherit those land and sell them up. Or the house I cherish so much, for the last 500 years, all my family was born and grow here, but then probably my son and daughter would sell them out as soon as I die, something like that. And I don't want that because it is money made by me and my ancestors, not my sons and daughters. But then they will do whatever they want to do, irresponsible and things like that. That's why some of them try to do the what I call trust. So basically, I'm giving this land and money to my son, but I would restrict what he can do with it. So he can, maybe I give him a building, the building rent my son can use, but he can never sell the building to someone else and things like that. So there are fathers and mothers who want to inherit its asset in the form of trust. Economically thinking, this is not very desirable. I mean, it's basically a problem between the dead father and living son. So the dead father wants the asset to be used in one direction, but the living son, living son want to use it the other way. But then right now, before the death of the father, the asset was father's, so he gave some restrictions. Basically, give the ultimate freedom to the owner to what to do is economically efficient. I mean, the dead father does not trust the son. Maybe son might do something bad. But let's assume that the father also think in the past terms. I mean, in the future, so many things would be different. Maybe some IT stock and bonds has a much better prospect to be profitable than some old house at the rural area. Then maybe the son might be correct in 10 years from now, even though father is correct right now. But then if you cherish the father's wish, so even after 10, 20 years, the son cannot do anything with the money, even though he has a huge opportunity to make some money. That would be a sorry phenomenon. So most countries has a limit. Okay, it's your money. So when you give it to your son, you can have some tag in it, like the son cannot do that, and things like that. However, that cannot be forever. So in some countries, okay, it's like only 10 or 20 years. Your restrictions, your wish would be cherished, but after 10, 20 years, your son and daughters can do whatever you like. But anyway, that is another point of struggle in real life. Another thing, I keep saying, okay, the ownership should be cherished, the property right should be respected. That's the whole theme we have been doing in the lectures, like for 5, 6 lectures. So maybe it's applying to you. Then sometimes the law should eliminate the ownership. Yeah, there are some cases like that. We are going to look at that. Adverse possession. Okay. After certain years, one cannot claim its right. Okay, think about situation. You have a house, your neighbor has a house, okay? And you found out that the building of your neighbor was built 30 years ago, and today you want to sell your house. So you brought in the expert and they measure everything and they say, oh my God, your neighbor's house was partially built on your land. So there's a borderline between you and your neighbor. Your neighbor's house invaded to your side maybe 1 meter. You didn't know that. And you didn't know that and you didn't complain at all. And today, after 30 years, finally you found out. So what did you do? Are you gonna ask your neighbor to pay? Or you may ask your neighbor to destroy the building because it's illegal to build a house in somebody else's land. And the law says it depends on many things, but usually if it's 20 years past since the violation of the ownership, the 1 meter from the borderline would be a new borderline, which means you would lose the land which your neighbor invaded. Why? I mean, 20 years? Why does that matter? The thing is that is anyway adverse possession, which means even though your property is invaded by someone, like your land, your neighbor built something on your land, it is, for example, 20 years, you didn't notice it, you didn't formally argue that that person did something wrong, then because you didn't argue it for 20 years, the land would become your neighbor's land. You lose the ownership. Why? Think about this. I mean, because of course the answer is because we are doing law and economics, because losing ownership is more efficient. Think about this. There is no limit of violation of property right. So you purchase a land from someone like Mike, and then the Mike got the land from his father and grandfather. So like 5 generations of Mike's family own the land. And then he is willing to sell it to you, you purchase it. And later, you found out, oh my God, my great-great-grandfather, who lived 200 years ago, violated the property right. So actually, the land you purchased was not Mike's, but it was, for example, Jake's. So because Mike's great-great-grandfather made some mistake 200 years ago. Now you pay everything and you purchase from Mike, and you lost the whole thing. Because 200 years ago, Jake's great-great-grandfather and Mike's great-great-grandfather misunderstood something. And the ownership was actually correctly belonged to Jake's, not Mike's. If this thing happens to you, what would be your behavior in the future? Maybe it's not you. You heard about these stories. Then, whenever you purchase something, you have to go back thousands and thousands years ago, whether there's anything wrong. But think about that. There has been so many wars and so many political turmoil and so many things. And how can you possibly check 1,000 years of the legal process of that land? So it's the same as please don't buy the land kind of thing. Because for the last 1,000 years in Joseon Dynasty or Korea Dynasty, somewhere, I'm pretty sure for any piece of land, there was some kind of legal problem existed. So tracing back so far in the past would give a unnecessary anxiety to the person who trade the land or something. Okay, therefore, this anxiety would prevent so many trade, which is not good, like this coronavirus we are experiencing. When people stop trading, stop going out and buying and selling, you can see the economic impact from it. The stock market dropped like 20% because of this stopping of the trade because of coronavirus. And it's not coronavirus, but if you give too much legal burden to the people involved, the reaction would be they would stop trading. So that would be really bad thing to the economy. So the law is correctly say, okay, you just trace back 20 years. So it's very recently something got wrong, then okay, then you may experience some loss. But there is no, if something happens more than 20 years ago, then you don't have to worry about it. Even though this land was illegally taken by my great-grandfather, that was such a long time ago. Okay, so that is already nullified. So don't do that. Okay, this thing happens a lot, like copyright. If someone wrote a book, then maybe as long as he's alive and plus some period, you cannot use that book freely. However, the copyright is the author's right to monopolize whatever he write down. I wrote a book. If someone copy and use that book, I can charge him. Like I can sue him and get money from him. But it's not going to be forever. Usually that would last as long as I'm alive and plus like 50 years from my death or something. So why? Whenever I write something, someone might find out, like 2,000 years ago, some Chinese scholar already said that. And that Chinese scholar has a great-great-grandson, and he may charge me, oh, you quoted my 2,000 years ago ancestors' word without paying me money. In that sense, nobody can write anything, nobody can compose any music anymore, okay? Because there's nothing new, and whenever I write something, some Greek scholar, some British scholar, some Chinese scholar already did that 500 years ago, and they begin to sue me. It would be only a stupid person to write anything. But then, writing some new idea is the basic engine of human improvement or the society's advancement. Therefore, giving too much burden on someone. So basically, when I'm writing something, I check for the last 100 years ago somebody did that, and I just falsely quote that. But then it's over 100 or over 50 years, then I don't care because I'm not going to be sued on that. Okay, so after a certain period, the possession would disappear unless you keep doing something to maintain that. Okay, because that the protecting private property right, as we have emphasized over and over again, very important, because people would work much harder when it's yours than when it's everybody else's. Okay? However, if that continues too much, then people are afraid of getting sued. Therefore, after a certain period, we have to lessen the burden of the legal sue for the people who trade. Estray statutes. When you found out something on the street, okay, you found out lots of cash. Can you get it? Yeah, yes and no. The estray statute is the law, what you should do when you found something on the street. So somebody lost it and you found it. Then you cannot get it. Like, you found a ring on the street, diamond ring, very expensive. Oh my God, I like it. And you took it. That is illegal. You can go to jail. But you report to the police, I found this diamond ring on the street. Then the police would announce that this diamond ring was found on the street. If it has an owner, please come to the police station. And it turns out nobody comes in, or somebody comes in, but it turns out they are not the real owner. They're just want to get the diamond ring, something like that. So the police cannot find the real owner after a certain period. The police is supposedly give it back to you. Okay? So then it's safely yours. Why you have to report to police? Because, somebody lost it and there's maybe no hope the owner would appear again. If you stolen something and then police found out, oh, where did you get it? And you might say, oh, I found it on the street. So the diamond ring was not found on the street. Maybe you stole it from somebody's pocket or somebody's finger. From police point of view, they cannot tell whether you stole it, you found it on the street. Therefore, you should report to the police first. And if you do that, if it was stolen, you wouldn't do that. So anybody who has diamond ring and insists, I found out on the street, but I did not report to the police would think you as a thief. That's why you go to jail. Okay, whether you really found it or not, or stole it. So whenever you found something on the street, you should report to the police. And then after a certain period, of course, if the real owner does not appear after a certain period, the police could not get it. Okay, it would be a really bad thing. And who has the right to possess that? You, who found it on the street. So there are some times when you cannot find out the real owner and it was found, then the founder would be the owner. But once again, you should report to police at first. Otherwise, police will arrest you. Okay, another, I think, interesting topic is unbundling. Okay. Unbundling of what? Unbundling of the ownership. Okay. Do you have a wristwatch? Yeah. And the wristwatch can be very expensive. I mentioned the Rolex watch before. Those things can be very expensive. I think tens of $1,000s or something. Okay. This Watch usually owned by one person. Let's say once again, who owns it? Like Bob. Bob owns a very expensive watch. And Bob has a friend who is Richard. And Richard does not have expensive watch. But then, unlike Bob, Richard is a Richard is from, I don't know, Korea. And then for Koreans, Christmas and New Year's Day is something the family gathers and things like that. On the other hand, Bob, who does not have any friend. So Christmas, New Year's Day, Bob does not meet anyone. Let's assume that this expensive wristwatch, they are expensive not because of their function, like some stupid wristwatch, like $10 wristwatch is as good as the expensive Rolex or Cartier watch when you just concern about taking the time, okay? It just mainly looks and your social status. So the watch is owned by Bob, and Bob usually show it off in the working place. However, because Bob does not have any family members or something, so Bob is alone on Christmas and New Year's Day. On the other hand, Richard has a large family and he wants to show off when his family and friends gathers in Christmas and New Year's Day. So Richard offers Bob, can I get your expensive watch from something like December 20th to the 5th of January. So 15 days a year, can I get the ownership? And Bob think, okay, those times I have nobody to show off my wristwatch. But Richard, that is the time for you to show off the expensive wristwatch. So let's do it. But instead of the rent it to you every year, I need some money. So this watch is, let's say, $10,000. But then for that 15 days a year, you pay me $1,000. So 10% of the watch. Then I'll give you the watch 15 days every year. So basically this watch is owned by Bob 90% and 10% by Richard. And they divide it up by the date. As I said, when people should be free to do whatever things concerning their property, in this case, the wristwatch. Because who knows better about getting happiness from the wristwatch? The judge or Bob and Richard? Of course, Bob and Richard. They are the real person with the watch, and judge would not care. He has so many things in his mind. The watch is not his. He wouldn't care. So the basic rule is whoever is the owner of that property, they have as much as total freedom to how to use the property. And if possible, the government and judge should not interfere. So on the surface, this is really good thing to unbundling the ownership, like separating the owner, unbundling the ownership, 90% Bob, 10% Richard. So the second sentence, basically the government should endorse any voluntary trade, in this case, Bob and Richard. But, I said but in many countries, this kind of unbundling of ownership is not allowed. Okay? Maybe you can unbundle the ownership of house. Okay, the house you are in, the husband get half, the wife get half, maybe possible. Why? when you purchase house, as I told you before, you have to go to the government and check who owns the house. Then you will immediately find out the house was owned by two persons, the husband and wife. What about watch? The government does not register the watch. So when someone is saying, oh, I'm gonna sell you this very expensive watch, how can you be sure that that is the owner? Oh, the watch is on his wrist. Okay, in his wrist. So he has the watch, which automatically you have to believe that watch is his. Okay, because the government cannot verify that. Okay, I already explained the verification cost and the registering cost. The government think verifying the registration cost of verifying whose watch it is too expensive and too much tax money would be wasted. So they decide not to cover that. So you met Bob. Bob says, oh, this watch is very expensive, $10,000. Are you going to buy it? And he may say, oh, but I'm going to charge you instead of 10,000, 90.5 thousand. Oh my God, 9,500 for the watch, which is automatically 10,000. You said, what a bargain! You are going to buy it because then you're going to be so happy that I have $500 profit out of it. But then later, somebody named Richard came into you on Christmas Day. Oh, give me that watch. Why? Because that watch is 10% owned by me, and I would be used from Christmas to New Year's Day, 15 days, at the end and at the beginning of the year. And you say, oh, Bob didn't tell me anything. And Richard say, oh, but we have a contract like this, and I have 10% ownership. But then that would be a big problem because when you purchase it, you purchase something that is worth $10,000, but actually you purchase something that is $9,000 at $9,500. So when things are naturally to be thought of as like one person owns it, but it turns out two people own the same thing, then a lot of this cheating and legal problem would be happening. So it is one thing to cherish the free will of common, like sharing ownership of something, unbundling the ownership is one thing, but the chaos caused out of it, in this case, in reality, more severe. So any legal system would not allow this because unbundling of ownership would cause a lot of mistakes, a lot of cheating, in this case by Bob. And there must be, it's destined to be a fight between Richard and the new owner. So considering all the turmoil and confusion, and